Welcome back to Pieces of Miss Minnie. I want to thank all of you and all the new subscribers and all the viewers that have been joining me on this journey over the past year. As you know, this was a very experimental channel for me to do. And it's evolved and I've evolved and we both continue to evolve together. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in and subscribing and liking the videos and your comments. And should you have any questions or want to hear more about a topic or want me to go further into it, please leave a comment under the video and I will basically gather all those comments up and maybe I'll do a Ask Me Anything episode or a part 2 with somebody in particular you enjoyed. And so with that, I am joined by a surprising guest. Well, I should say a man who became a very surprising friend, actually. His name is Joe Picciotto. Otto. And we met very incidentally, kind of coincidentally. It was a very random meeting. And I have to say, this year was a surprising year and some really great surprising friends came out of it. And I have to say, you were definitely top 3 of 2025 as far as people.
I don't believe in coincidence. So
no,
I believe things happen for a reason.
No. And I wandered in very randomly and you were sitting there very randomly. And then we had a 4-hour conversation.
Yeah. Very enlightening conversation.
It talked about everything.
Yeah.
And it was, that's when I realized I'd found a kindred spirit.
Absolutely.
And so, Joe is I'm going to get this right, a retired plainclothes anti-crime officer from the South Bronx. And he has 2 major projects coming out in 2026. The first is a podcast, which I was interviewed on as well, called Faith, Focus, and Freedom, which you can find on YouTube early in 2026. And then Chronicles of a South Bronx Cop.
Yes.
That is also coming out in 2026. Yes. So you're going to be going into next year roaring, clearly.
Very busy, hopefully. God willing. God willing.
Damn right. Yeah. No, the universe is on notice. And you're going to be very, very busy. And so I suspect that this is going to be one of perhaps several interviews that we do together because I think, I am a woman who has a lot of stories to tell, most of which I haven't yet. Yeah. But I think you are a man with even far more stories to tell, having done the line of work that you are in, which we're going to talk about soon. And I think I was thinking about this as I drove over here and I thought how is it we met and we had a good chat, but how is it that we actually really saw each other eye to eye? And I thought that really came down to the fact that we have both had such extreme lives.
Right.
Mine has certainly not compared to yours.
Well, different in a different sense.
Different, but certainly not as violent. And, as I have seen dark parts of humanity, I have been studying it largely from a very safe space. And I have been studying it from afar and watching people, but I have not been in the midst of actually the crime itself or the after effects or the trauma, the ramification, the PTSD.
Loss of life, friendships and people and everything that comes along with it. Yeah.
And
marriages.
Relationships with your children.
Everything.
What wouldn't it affect?
It affects everything.
Yeah. There's no way you
could. And the after effects are the biggest, because right now is what I'm dealing with. The after effects.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, I think that everyone in life, we all have a story, right? We all have experiences. We all, go through things, but it's how you handle the after part of it and the part that the unknown part of it, right? Which is now. What we're going through, what we're dealing with, the feelings, the emotions, the not knowing, the unknown. The unknown is the hardest part, and we were talking about spirituality and our relationships with God and how we're living life right now and trying to navigate this, So I think that's the tricky part,
Did you feel I mean, were you prepared for that? Like, did the force prepare you? Did mentors prepare you? Because
I think it's all a culmination of everything in our lives, right? Like, so, I grew up in the Bronx, my grandmother lived in the South Bronx. I stood with my grandmother when I was young. I have a big family in New York, but, just growing up in the Bronx, I mean, I saw everything before I became a cop. I saw everything, every aspect of life, death, fightings, brutality, violence. I saw that all in my teens, and, I guess, growing up in New York City, prepares you. I actually wanted to be a cop because I saw, people not being helped the right way at times.
Yeah.
Where I felt like maybe I can do a difference here. I can make a difference here and do something differently, for the people that I grew up with and the people in my neighborhood.
So when I hear stories like that, and I mean, I just did another personal development course, which was like ayahuasca and scrambled me entirely. But like, what I'm still what does that do to a child's brain? Like, and also I'm actually very interested in, that could have gone one of two ways. Like a lot of kids grow up seeing too much before their age. And even
we
now,
saw too much.
Even now, even if kids are
now
safe.
They see way more.
Because of pornography and, video games.
We didn't have that access.
You didn't have the access. You were living in it. And the irony, not irony, but sort of like sickness of us is that we could have actually prevented so many kids from seeing it now. But instead, we fed them porn. We fed them a lot of violence still.
I wouldn't say we fed them porn.
No, or like society or technology or, profitability of companies. But what do you think, so going back to that is like seeing that much as a child. And you can talk a little bit more if you're comfortable. But like, I feel like that could have bifurcated because that is also the petri dish that basically breeds the next generation of advocates and protectors and occasional heroes, as opposed to the next generation of criminals, to the next generation of violence, to the next generation of narcissism.
My opinion of it is that I think that, growing up in the 70s, and 80s, early 80s, 70s, I think that we were more responsible for ourselves at that time as kids. Like, we left the house 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning, met up with our friends and hung out all day until the streetlights came on. It was dinner time, and then went back out again in the night.
Yeah.
So, the neighborhood raised us, my mom was very strict, disciplinarian. And she always thought that children are to be seen and not heard. And she was loose with the hands. She was like a quick draw in the West. If you did something wrong,
I'm sorry.
You might catch a little beating. But looking back at it now, my dad was a fireman, so he wasn't home much. And but looking back at it now, I question sometimes to myself. I said, was she wrong? Maybe her tactics were wrong. You know what I mean? But I think that, situationally speaking, she might have been onto something because, I look at the kids of today that don't have any discipline, and you need discipline. You need consequences. You need consequences. The kids now don't have consequences, so, they just, everybody, it's like a free for all. Everybody's doing whatever they want to do, and even in the justice system, they have this defund the police and, cops can't do this, can't do that. When you're handcuffing police officers, in their jobs, how can you do this job if there's no consequences? If you get put in handcuffs and you get taken out of handcuffs, half an hour later,
right?
Revolving door of the justice system. It's horrible.
Yeah.
And it's from my perspective as a retired police officer. There has to be a consequence in life for everything. Discipline.
Right.
You know, you do something wrong, you're disciplined. Don't do it again. You put your hands on the stove, you're going to get burned.
Yeah.
You know, my mother would take your hand and put it next to the fire, you know, and say, this is, you see, you feel that? You know, so yeah, it was, and we still rebelled. You know, we still, you know, I was like, oh, you're going to put my hand on the fire. Tomorrow I'm going to be even worse, you know? So I was a little bit of, a rebellious kid, you know what I mean? Because my mom was like that, I was like, you're not going to do that to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I acted out on it, you know? But yeah, this is a really tough world right now with everything that's going on. I mean, financially, you know, the country and everything else. I mean, everybody has a big burden on them right now. And that burden is subjecting everyone to lash out at everything.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a big problem.
And I mean, I think those who didn't, you know, the discipline part, like I was not physically disciplined, but I grew up in a pretty strict. I was intellectually rebellious. I was actually like, I didn't see any like benefit of getting into trouble in real life. Like that just didn't seem like that wasn't a good strategy. But like, I didn't, you know, I was perhaps a little mischievous, but like I was never doing anything that was going to have like consequences. And I think part of that was that, I grew up in a really strict household. So that even me finally being able to go on sleepovers was a big deal. And, you know, I had to build a case and argue for my rights. And, you know, and even then my parents were like, who are they? Who are the parents? Who are the kids?
Right, but that's good.
We weren't let out of anyone's sight. And that went for my grandmother, my aunts. Like I had security.
That's how you became so successful in life. You know what I mean? That's how you went to school and you were disciplined and you did everything
that kind of
the right way.
I think like, you know, I know there's a very fine line, and I'm not advocating physical violence against children, of course, because there is far too much of that going on in the world as well. But it's like,
but you need to get a shot once in a while.
Like
if you're
parents
out of line.
need to participate.
Absolutely.
Like I think there are a lot of feral children being raised right now.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
And I think the kids have access to an absurd amount of money, some of them. And I think like, so they're already like uber consumers. You know, you've got like 8-year-old girls like spending $300 to $500 at Sephora.
I think that's a parent's fault too.
No, it totally is. No, I'm like, the parents have checked out. I'm like, that she wasn't born that way.
No.
There's so many things I want to talk about, and a lot of it really has to do, frankly, with your experience, because I know the book is coming out, but like I know you probably have a million stories, and I think what I have. The intersection. So going into your experience in more depth. And I think the intersections when it comes to like relationships is actually this intersection of love and violence, or the thin line. Yeah.
Chaos.
Yeah. I think love plus violence, or just the chaos of some people's relationships. And like, I've never wanted to be violent against somebody. Like if I don't like them, I usually ghost them. But there are some people, and a lot of people, it's not a minority. Like I don't know if there's anything that comes to mind, any like stories you remember?
You grow up in a dysfunctional household, you know, nothing's off the board, you know, anything's possible. I just, you know, I've always been like a big guy, and I had sisters, you know, sometimes, you know, we would get physical with each other, you know, and, I never thought it was like right to hit a woman. You know what I mean? So I never in my life thought, you know, let me punch this girl right in her face. You know what I mean? I never, you know, but I know people that have done that. I have friends that have done that, you know, you say, wow, you know, how could you get so upset, you know, that you want to physically harm somebody? But it also goes back to the way they were raised.
They saw it at home.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, when you see that, you grow up that way, you accept that. You know, even on a woman's side, you know, if you accept your dad hitting your mom, then you think that's okay. You know, if you watch your dad steal in a store, you think it's okay to steal. You know what I mean? If you see your friends stealing hubcaps off a car, then that's okay. You know what I mean? Nothing's off limits, you know, and you see these little things growing up, and, you know, then you start, you know, I could do this too. You know, I'm not going to get in trouble. You know what I mean? But you don't take into account that some of these guys do go to jail. You know what I mean? And
some people do get into trouble.
Right.
I think the difficult part is about being a good person, better person, whatever, playing by the rules, is that not everybody does play by the rules. So if you do play by the rules, to a large extent, it feels like you've just disadvantaged yourself, which is why absolutely. I think a lot of people, particularly, and that's correlated with money, obviously, like basically feel like, well, the consequences, do not outweigh the benefits. And frankly, there are no, that's what it feels like. It feels like there are no more rules.
Yeah. Well, what happens is, being a cop in the 90s and 2000s in that era, in the South Bronx, in any ghetto, I would say any ghetto in America, you're dealing with kids that are raised without dads. Parents are drug addicts. Whoever the parent is in the house, they're not really paying attention to the kid. So the street, like I said, the street partly raised me, and the street in a big part raises a lot of people. So, depending on your circumstances and where you're raised, you can be, there's certain areas that produce car thieves. There's certain areas that produce guys that rob people, strong arm robberies, gunpoint robberies. There's certain, areas that produce shooters and murderers, Jeez. So, when you're navigating through that world and you're seeing that, it's like the only way I could, equate it is you're in Africa and you're surrounded by lions, so you have to learn how to be a lion tamer real quick because you're going to get eaten. If you're either going to get eaten or you're going to live. So you have to figure that out. It's the same thing working in the ghetto. When you're working in the ghetto, so because I grew up in the Bronx, I had friends and, I was a street kid. I hung out in the projects every day and, I saw people killed and shot, stabbed, fighting all the time. My friends, constant, battling back and forth. And my high school was very violent, so, you grew up that way. In the inner city. And it's survival. It's survival of the fittest, and I thank God to this day that I survived it, but I had friends that went to prison and friends that have been killed, so that's what probably created my feeling to become a police officer, because I felt like I can help my friends. I can help my people, And that's why I became a cop. But I found out very quickly, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? They don't care. You just have that uniform on, and you're the guy that's in between me and getting away. But I mean, I can say proudly that in my time as a police officer, I met a lot of good people. In these areas. And I made, I hope, some difference in some people's lives. Some people probably didn't dislike me because I was a policeman. But I carried myself in a way that, I risk my life every day to protect you and your family in this neighborhood. So you have to respect me for that. Yeah. You know what I mean? If absolutely. Only that. Right. If only
that's a lot to respect somebody for, because I don't. Right. Most people watching sure as hell don't.
Right. Yeah. So, that's the biggest part. But, you see that the problems that you understand financially, how can you tell a kid that's making $40,000 in a night selling crack to go work at McDonald's for $100, a week? No. It's never going to happen.
It's like, and the system has to work better. The system can't be so rigged against impoverished people already, which it is.
Right.
So it's like that, it's like
generational, it's generational. And you got to understand, in my world, when you grow up in the street, in the ghetto, that street is the whole world. They don't know about, they don't go to school, so they're not hearing about Europe and Africa. And, this is all like, oh, okay, they watch TV, they see it, but a lot of these, communities, they're so simple-minded, and I'm not all of them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the ones that have these issues, that have parents that are not teaching them, that have no mentors, that have, nobody.
It's literally like the absence of information.
Well. Right.
So they're almost living in a different period of time.
It's so amazing
Like
you
it's the
meet them, when
same
you
year, the
interact with
same
them, it's
period
like,
of time, but yet it's like
They
they're
don't get it.
actually somewhere else. It's like
Yeah.
going, you know.
absolutely. And you're talking to the wall. They don't hear
Oh.
you, and you're going, and the age range is from 8 years old to 35, 40 years old. And you're like, I can't believe that I'm talking to a 35-year-old guy whose brain is the size of this 8-year-old's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just don't get it.
And that's just like generational. That, I
and
mean,
it-
that's
yeah.
even like nutrition.
Everything.
That is,
Everything.
yeah.
I mean,
Access to education,
right.
just a chronic stress and like.
It's terrible. It's really terrible. And you want to do the best job you can do, and you want to be as fair as possible. But sometimes you're dealing with a lion who's hungry. You know what I mean? And you gotta, survive.
I'm still going to like pull you back almost to that decision to become an officer, because like you could have gone so many different directions.
Oh, yeah.
And you didn't. It's not like you were protected. You weren't protected.
I was protected by God because my mother was very religious and praying for me every day.
But what do you think made you want to help?
I saw my friends go to jail. I saw my friends getting shot and dying, and I was given a gift of discernment at a young age that I could understand things a lot better than other people.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah.
This is just
I
this is
appreciate
my opinion.
that.
Right,
no, I
this is my
definitely
opinion.
appreciate that.
And I felt like, I'm watching this movie of life, and I'm seeing things that I say, okay, well, what are my chances if I go this route? What are my chances if I go this route? I wasn't a school person, so
right,
I wasn't like,
right. Okay. All right. Yeah.
I wasn't going to college. I wasn't going to do all
enough.
that stuff. I did like a year in college. It wasn't for me, so I did more working construction jobs and stuff like that, and I was a bouncer and, so, for me, the police department was where I wanted to be for a long time.
Nice.
I took the test when I was in high school. They called me when I was like 20, and then I became a police officer after that. And, it was probably the best thing I did for myself. But now you have to survive. Now you have to survive. And,
Yeah.
I made some great friends. I mean, for all the people out there that think that cops are all assholes, they're not.
I don't.
I
never have.
I worked with fantastic, incredible police officers.
If I get into trouble, who am I calling?
Right. Well, people, they don't know that until they're in trouble.
Let's be real about this.
Yeah, but the majority, I would say 95% of the people that I work with were fantastic people and great cops and great human beings, and you learn, you grow up with them. You grow up, you learn from these people, you know what I mean? You drink from that well.
Yeah. And
it was an amazing time. I'm happy I survived it, that I'm here now speaking with you.
But that is also crazy that people have jobs that they need to actually survive.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't appreciate that, like, some jobs could be somebody else's life and death, but very few jobs are your own life and death. And
Absolutely.
particularly in service of other people,
Right.
and particularly in service of strangers, not even your family.
Yeah.
That like there are actually very, very, very few jobs or careers where that ever happens.
Yeah.
Plus, it sounds like you loved it, but like, was there any point in time, I almost think like you survived your childhood, which that by itself is a fucking feat of nature, right? Because a lot of people didn't survive or they came out very
I had a good
broken.
core group of friends, though, that we stood together with each other. We backed each other up.
A lot of people don't get that. Like, that is really like, that will make or break a match.
I feel very blessed.
If you had been like a loner during that time, it would have been terrifying.
Very difficult.
You would have,
you couldn't be alone. You grew up in New York City. You have to have a crew. You have to have a group with you. You can't. You're not going to survive alone. You're going to get robbed. You're going to get beat up. Something's going to happen to you. So you have to have a crew. And I had a good crew. I had a good crew of people that, we watched each other's backs. Yeah. And that's how we survived, my early years, and then I had a good crew with the NYPD when I became a policeman, and that's how I survived. But I always treated everything at the highest risk level. I treated every job
Yeah.
Like, there was 100 bandits behind the door with AK-47s waiting for me. And that's how I survived, and that's how I made it through, because
you never got too comfortable.
I never got comfortable. In the police department, they say no job is routine, and that's how I treated it. I treated every job like it was not routine. Like this was the first time I was going to be in this situation, even though I've seen it a million times. I treated every job uniquely.
I remember the first time we met as well, and how, like, one of the things that stuck out to me that you said was that, like, because I was fascinated by just, like, the underbelly of humanity that you've seen. And I was also fascinated at how quickly you have to navigate that. And that is what you just said.
Yeah.
Split seconds. It's milliseconds.
Yeah, seconds.
And that is discernment.
Yeah.
But like your instincts and your intuition and your discernment and your pattern recognition.
Right.
And you're connecting the dots very quickly and playing out the probability of 5 different scenarios,
and
depending.
You're hoping, at the time you work, they let you pick the guys you work with. They give you a little leeway. They let you, if you feel comfortable with somebody, they let you rock with each other. I'm using, Bronx lingo, they let you, this is the guy you get along with. You have to be with each other all day long. All right, we're going to put you guys together, and you, after, you figure each other out a little bit, you understand. You could talk to each other without even speaking to each other. You see something, you say, I got your back, you got my back. And then when you go on a team, then you have a few guys and everybody can read the room. Everybody can read what's going on. So it's a nonverbal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That comes into play. And also,
interesting. This is fascinating.
Yeah. And also,
so you almost have this like collective consciousness between all of you. Like you're already a hive mind before you go out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You turn it on. When you turn it on, when you wake up in the morning, I always say this because, my wife always told me, you have no feelings. You have no, you're cold.
That's not true.
And I said that, what happens is, for so long you go to work, you have to turn that off, because if you leave it on, you won't be able to do this job. They say working in the ghetto, working in the South Bronx, where we worked, it was so busy that working 1 year in an A house is like working 20 years somewhere else. So you see everything that you could actually see all aspects of police work in one day. You can see somebody shot. You can shoot at somebody. You can get stabbed. You can see somebody stabbed. You can see somebody thrown off a building. You can see a dead baby. You're going to jobs every few minutes. You're answering jobs.
How are you metabolizing that psychologically and emotionally?
Everything. You just do everything one job at a time.
But like you don't even get time, and then you come home and then you have 6 hours of sleep, and then you're back in a war zone all over again.
Yeah, there's no de-stress. They say don't take it home with you. How can you not take
There's no way you couldn't even take it home.
Bathtub, not take it home, especially you have children. So there's no way you can't take that. You could leave that at the door when you go home. But like I said, you shut it off, and after shutting it off for so long, it doesn't turn back on. So it's just, you lose that part of you. It's like I've been in shootings, and when you shoot somebody or you get shot at, it takes a little bit of you and kills it. It's like damage to your heart. If you have a heart attack, it damages your heart a little bit, right? So every time you go to a high level situation, a fight, a stabbing, you're in the middle of a melee, a riot, it takes a little bit off for you. You know what I mean? And then, you have to heal it, start over again.
When do you heal it?
No, you heal it right now. You deal with it and then you move on. You just put it away. When you put that vest on in the morning and you put that gun on your side and your secondary weapon on the other side, and you go out knowing that I might have to shoot somebody or I might get shot. That's not an easy thing to do.
How many times have you been shot?
Oh, I've been in shootings a lot of times, but I've shot my gun at people 3 times.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's not much in a very long career. I mean, you're lucky.
I can
imagine
that.
But
I've been in the scene of thousands of shootings.
And how many times have you been shot at? Have you been shot?
No, I've never been shot. Thank God. But I've come close, but it's not even, I mean, shootings happen so fast, that by the time the shooting could happen and in seconds. One time I was interviewing a guy at a store for a robbery, and this guy just got out of a car, walked up to a guy in the corner, shot him in the head.
So this is something I've been grappling with, at a more macro level. And, I know too much about too many genocides going on around the world.
Mm-hmm.
I know too much about too much injustice. I know too much about human trafficking, about slavery, about, any amount of war crimes going on and crimes against humanity. I know about them from a safe distance. You've seen a lot of this up close. And I think I have personally really struggled with what the hell is going on inside of people's minds and too many people's minds.
Evil. There's evil. There's evil in the world. If you believe in God, and I don't want to get too religious, but if you believe in God, you have to believe in the devil, and the devil controls this world. So there's evil people out here, and you have to, understand that what we're going through in life is partly our fault.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Right? So we have to accept responsibility for the things that we cause. We have to accept accountability for the things that we do, right? And, sometimes we think everybody is great, and not everybody is great in relationships, in life, and
they're just not redeemable.
Right. So I think that some people are just broken to a point where you can't fix them, and I think part of me is just tired of trying to, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that part of my trauma in my life, my PTSD, is that for so long I've been trying to fix people that are broken, the pieces are gone. Even myself, my pieces are gone. There's pieces of me that are gone that'll never come back, and it's a sad thing because I wish I could be that young teenager again that was optimistic, and without this cynicism that I have now and this thought process of there's more bad people than good people. I was always hopeful.
Yeah.
In my life.
I get that. I get that.
And part of me is still hopeful that there are good people out here, and the way I treat things now is I try to stiff arm, toxic people out of my life. If I feel the toxic energy, I stay away from you now. But it took me 56 years to learn that, you know what I mean? And I'm still learning, because I still make mistakes. I still allow people in that I shouldn't, that are not good for me.
Yeah.
And everybody does, because that hope, that little bit of hope that maybe if they hang out with me, they'll come to the light. Right. They'll be like, this guy's cool. I can hang out. I can have a good time with him. You know what I mean?
I've tried to heal a lot of people, not as many as you.
But now I try to more just be as good as I could be for myself. You know what I mean? If somebody sees that light in me, and you enjoy, right, like us, you know what I mean? And you understand that you can see who a good person is and who isn't. Yeah. I can't talk you into being a good person. You're either a good person,
and that's not your job.
Person. Right. So, for me, if you can be fucked up to me, there's something wrong with you because I'm cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean? Yes, obviously.
I'm cool. I don't have any negative towards anyone. You know what I mean? I give everybody even. If you're cool, I treat you cool.
Yeah, me too.
I used to tell that to the guys in the street. I used to say, listen, man, you give me if you can make this make sense to me, we can talk. If you treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect. I don't know you. You don't know me.
Absolutely.
I'm just here doing a job. This is not personal. This is a job. This is my job. My job is to protect the public. I'm protecting you. You're standing on this corner. I'm working this block. I'm protecting you too. And people need to understand that part. Like relationships, you know what I mean? Like marriage, like your children. If you can get through the brain You know, some people get it. Some people just don't, you know.
Do you regret becoming an officer, like with the PTSD you're dealing with now and with all the friends that you've lost? I mean, we haven't even talked about 9/11.
Yeah. For what I've been through and what I deal with every day with the PTSD and everything else, if I could change careers, if I could go back in time, I would have become an electrician or a plumber, you know, a carpenter or something like that. I would have just gotten a regular job, but I just thought that this was my purpose in life, and I still feel like it was.
I think it probably was.
You know,
I don't think like purposes are necessarily easy. I think for those of us who know they have bigger purposes in life,
I don't think there's anything.
It is never goddamn easy.
Never easy. It's never been easy.
Yeah, it's never been easy
because
for me either.
I'm a critical thinker. I'm a constant. You know, I'm an overthinker. You know, I think about everybody's feelings, and I always put my feelings aside. You know, for everyone else. You know, is this right? Is this right for this person? Is this right for you try to be fair for everybody. You can't be.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that I've learned.
And then you're left behind. I mean, you know, in the last episode I did with Jessica, and it was a totally different thing. We talked about self-erasure, and we talked about it, you know, the first thing that came to mind was from like a mother's point of view. But actually, I think like anybody who is in a protector, provider role, whose role in life is to take care of other people, and you were doing it not just at a familial level with your wife and kids, you were doing it at a societal level. And you were doing it with parts of society that refused help, that like actively
that hated you,
wanted the opposite of help. They actively wanted the opposite of peace and safety. And it's like you know, and the evil part, I think it's like, and I still struggle with that. I'm like, is this just a big spiritual war?
Absolutely, I think so.
Is that it? Is that the point of Earth?
I think so.
Like, have we come to like a consensus? Like,
I think I really believe that we're in the middle of a spiritual battle. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me this long to understand that, but I do understand that now. I know it sounds crazy to people that don't really believe that.
It doesn't sound crazy to me.
Right, because you believe it. But the people that don't believe it, the people that are watching this right now that don't believe that, you know, you have to go through things in life and experiences to really delve into the inner workings of this realm that's around us, right? These other dimensions that are around us that control everything, this power, you know, and, you know, I'm alive today because of God. And that's the only reason I'm alive. You and me both. Yeah. It's the only reason I'm alive. By the grace of God, I'm here. I'm alive. And I thank God every day. You know, I get to see the kids. You know, I get to see my family. But I'm not happy. You know, I'm not happy. I don't feel good. You know, mentally you feel, you know, you're not right. You know, and I know it's everything that I've absorbed for so long, you know, because I take on everybody's problems. You know, if you're in pain, I feel your pain. That's what's wrong with being an empath. Yeah. Right? Being empathic, you feel everybody's pain.
I mean, like, to be an empath and be a police officer must have been like the toughest.
You have to put it aside.
Yeah. You know, but it's like in your DNA. It does help.
Believe it or not, it helps because...
And your discernment's a lot better for it too. And you, by and large, do right by people.
Yeah, you're fair. I was fair.
Yeah.
You know, I might have been tough sometimes, but I was fair. And I think that was the best part of me as that role of a police officer, you know, leads out. I think the better part of me was the part that I was fair.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, some people might say at times, or you might have been over aggressive but it all pertains to the situation you're in. You know what I mean? If you're watching something for a few seconds, it might look brutal, but you're not watching it for the whole clip, the whole time. You know, from where it, you know, from the beginning it starts to the end. You know, you're seeing a piece. You know, you're not hearing that radio run come over there. You're not hearing the person screaming at 1013 or 1085. I need help. Yeah, you're just seeing the aftermath of it, right? The response. So when the only way I could equate it is that, you know, when you're in a police car and you're working on patrol and it's a busy day and that radio goes beep, 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 you know, in the confines of wherever you're working, It's a signal 1013. It's a signal 1085. Officer needs assistance. And you know that that guy on the other side of that radio needs you right now. Mm-hmm. You're just thinking about that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you're running to it, people can't understand that, that part of it.
Yeah.
That's partly why I started writing the book. I started writing the book because I was trying to translate to the regular person that we're human beings also.
Yep.
We're not supermen. We have feelings. We have, we have problems just like you. I might have fought with my wife this morning before I went to work the way you're fighting with your wife right now.
Yeah.
And I come onto the scene and, you think, oh, look, this fucking asshole's going to come over here and, beat me up or, throw the cuffs on me. No. Listen,
yeah.
I understand, man. Tell me your story. Come over here, talk to me. Tell me your story. Let your wife go talk to my partner. Mm-hmm. Let's figure out what's going on here. Let's find the best remedy for this. You know what I mean? But sometimes people don't want to hear that,
Yeah.
They're just deaf.
And you can't talk them down at that point. Yeah. They're just like, they're off the reservation.
It's the same thing with life. You know what I mean? You're in a relationship. Sometimes you're talking to the wall. The other person's not listening to you. And you can't get through to them.
They're probably having flashbacks to their childhood or something. Who knows?
Whatever that trauma is. I don't have that answer, man.
I wasn't there, but
all I know is that I'm paying for your bullshit.
Yeah.
Or
your parents' bullshit, or your ex-husband's bullshit,
right?
Or
so that's life, But if I can go back in time, back to the question you asked me, if I can go back in time, I would have probably have not been a police officer. Knowing what I know now, I'd probably be a zillionaire because I know all the answers to the lotto, all the numbers to the lottos that have been won over these years. So
that is like, I was like, if you survived your childhood, why did you go into something so dangerous? You know what I mean? Just to do it all over again. I get it. It's a rhetorical question.
Right.
It's not a real question. It's a rhetorical question.
Don't mess me up over here.
I think I also wanted to know, I'm like, would you go back and do it again? Because I think there are also very few jobs that, and this goes for veterans of war, who have not been adequately supported or taken care of either, is that I don't think we recognize as society.
Nobody appreciates what you go through. Nobody.
And the after
but
effects.
What people don't understand is that when you work in a house, the A house is a busy house. Busy house is your precinct. Wherever you work, it's a busy place, the ghetto. Uh-huh. When you work for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years in the ghetto, in the middle of all this anarchy, it's like going to war every day.
And you did it for decades.
For that, yeah. So people need to appreciate law enforcement in all aspects, because law enforcement, that's that thin line between you and the bad guy.
Yeah.
And you need the good guys.
Yeah.
And there needs to be penalties. There needs to be penalties for the bad guys, because without consequences, there's anarchy.
How much would you say? I mean, I think, and it also goes down to budgeting and everything. I have always been, and I think it's accurate, law enforcement has been forced to respond a lot more to mental illness that,
I don't think it's a lot more. I think it's always been the same thing. I think that, they used to have more mental institutions, places where you could go to get help, or people would be brought to.
And it wouldn't be so expensive and private.
It's not as much as it was before. So you have a lot of people homeless walking around the streets that have mental issues, and, having they proposed having a therapist or a psychiatrist responding to these jobs, in a police department or, in the cities. And I think that's ridiculous.
Okay.
Because most of them are violent people that you get these calls to violent crimes.
Well, I mean, at that point in time, it's too late. Now it's violent,
but if you're getting a 911 call for a crazy guy with a knife.
Yeah.
You're not talking the knife out of his hand,
right?
Most of the time, you know what I mean? You have to use some kind of tactic to get that knife away from the person, or whatever the weapon is, or whatever the situation is. Sometimes you get lucky and you can talk them down, but sometimes if you can't, there has to be levels of force used to get this guy subdued. You know what I mean? And if you think you're going to get out of a car with a notepad and say, tell me what your issue is, and the guy's going to be like, well, I'm having a bad day. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, it's not going to happen.
What would you say almost like, so you've seen it. And the thing is, let's call it like a food chain, right? Between like mental illness, violent families, traumatic childhoods, rough neighborhoods, poverty, lack of education, lack of nutrition, all of it. And then, lack of mental health care. By the time it found you as a police officer, that was at the end of
it was already broken.
You know what I mean? This is like decades in societal. Like, how if you got a chance to really advise like a city, or, if you could say like overall, because by the time you show up,
the truth,
it's,
because I thought about this a lot.
Yeah.
The truth is it starts at home.
Okay.
It starts at home. It starts in school. It starts at a young age. I always used to say, if I can get this kid at like 10 years old, 11 years old, and help him, maybe he has a shot.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the crimes you see of this teenage years, like, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, those are the ones doing the most stuff.
Really?
Yeah. Believe it or not, a lot of these crimes are teenagers. Yeah. And you say
Don't
yourself,
they have homework?
And let me tell you something. Some of them are geniuses.
Yeah,
some of them are so smart. I mean, on a street level, you say, man, you take this kid, and you put him in school, and you give him a little, discipline.
Yeah.
This kid could be a doctor, could be a scientist, could be anything
brilliant
he wants
lawyer,
to be.
like
I've seen so much wasted talent.
Yeah.
In my time, in the Bronx, that I was like, man, it's so, you want to adopt everybody. Number one, you want to adopt all these kids. Everybody you deal with that's impoverished or going through, it was up to me. And if I had $1 billion, I'd adopt every one of them. You know what I mean? Because they just didn't have a shot. A lot of them just don't have a shot. And it's just the circumstances of where they're raised and how they're raised. But I think that it all stems to childhood. It all stems from how your parents treat you when you're a kid. How much love did you get? How much guidance? How many times were you told no?
Yeah.
And a lot. That's what forms a criminal. You know what I mean? If a person only sees bad, that's all they know. Yeah. But when you're dealing with that person, you have to understand that really quick. That this guy, he doesn't know what good is. So me being good to him, he doesn't understand that language.
Right. You're someone speaking Latin and someone speaking Sanskrit. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So like, I hate to say this.
Not that sophisticated.
Yeah. You can't say, excuse me, sir, can you please, refrain from, they don't hear that. You have to speak in their language. Sometimes you have to curse. Sometimes you have to be firm, so. But I think that transcends in all parts of all aspects of life, If you're dealing with in your relationship, you have to speak that language. If you're dealing with your children, you have to speak that language. So you need to understand all different languages.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you go to another country, you have to learn some words.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Or you're not going to be able to communicate.
I have traveled a lot. Like no, I need to like move differently wherever I am.
Right. So that communication is the key. Education is the key.
Yeah.
I don't mean education school-wise. I mean education life-wise.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big key to everything. Understanding people, But like I said, there's some people that just have that Antichrist spirit that doesn't want to hear it. They just, listen, it's my way or the highway, and you have to learn. And it's sad because you say, damn, I have experience. Like, I'm trying to tell you something. I know how this plays out.
Like, let me give you the shortcut.
Why do you want to go through the hard knocks?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
But if you want to go, you want to feel it, be my guest.
People too, but
yeah, it's hard. It's very hard.
Do you think compared to how you grew up, things have gotten better or worse?
Worse. I think my generation was the last great generation.
How old are you again?
56. Yeah. I think that, growing up in the street and playing in the fire hydrant and the ice cream truck and growing up playing, baseball with your friends and football.
Was it despite all the violence, would you say you had a happy childhood?
Yeah.
Really?
Listen, I had a great core group of friends. I was a street kid. I was out in the street all day long, every day. You know, I'm still like that. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I'm out in the street all day. Right. I'm out all day long. It's just innate. You know what I mean? So I think that, you know, yeah, besides that, my mom was a little maniac-ish, you know what I mean? And you know, but I think, you know, everybody I knew, somebody had a little bit of mental illness, you know, somebody's parent, you know what I mean? So,
yeah,
you know, looking back at it, was my mom extreme? Maybe for her, she wasn't.
Yeah,
for me,
who knows how she grew up, right? Like,
so
who the hell knows?
For me at the time, but looking back at it, you know, do kids need to get a whack once in a while? I agree 100%. You know what I mean? Do the kids need to be quiet sometimes? Yes. You know, to know their place, you know your place. Everybody needs to know their lane.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
and
absolutely.
I think, right, if you stay in your lane, you're good.
Yeah, and you'll grow into it. Like, we all earn our position at the table in the right amount of years with the right amount.
I would not change my formative years for anything because they made me who I am. And I think that I'm a good person. You know, and I think that I'm a good quality person, you know, and I think that, you know, it made me care more, you know, to want to help people, to want to love people, you know, to want people to love me, you know, and I think that's what is the essence of it, you know, but I do think that I had a great childhood, you know.
Fuck, I would never say that about my childhood. People are like, how was your childhood? I'm like, shut up. I'm like, fuck you.
Because they tried their best, you know what I mean? And you know, look back at it, my dad was fantastic.
Yeah, that's fair. My parents did try their best too.
My dad was probably the greatest person I know in my life. And because he just gave so much love. All my love, I have to give my dad credit for that because my dad, whenever he had an opportunity, he hugged us, he kissed us, he loved us, and he showed us what love was. You know what I mean? So anybody that knows my father knows that my father is the most loving dude in the world. You know, and he's funny and he's a good man. I mean, he gave up so much of himself for us that, you know, I don't think he knows how appreciated he is.
He was a fireman, you said.
And he was a fireman, yeah. He was a hero to us. And, you know, he made up for what my mom lacked, you know. And I guess as a team, he could never do what my mom did, you know, and she could never do what he did.
He did, yeah.
So, you know, it made me who I am.
What was their marriage like?
Well, they're still married. Yeah, they're still married. As dysfunctional as it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's fair.
But I think now it's just...
I mean, that's to be expected.
I don't know what the other would do without the other one right now.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Going on 60 years married. You know, they've been married, you know, for a long, long time, you know, so...
Good for them. I know. No, that was a different era. I mean, my parents are going on 46 years now. And I'm like, and they drive each other crazy. But, you know, like, absolutely. I respect it. And I do respect them as much as I, you know, talk about my childhood being like very unstable.
We don't know. We didn't live in their shoes. We live in our shoes.
No, I mean, my mom was a refugee. Yeah. So, like, you know, it worked out better for me, right? You know, regardless.
Every accolade that I've received in my life and my career is due to I give all the credit to my dad, you know, because my dad showed me what it was to be a man. You know what I mean?
That is the topic I really want to talk about. Yeah. I think like there has been so much that I think everyone right now is really deconstructing what is masculinity, what is femininity, what is, you know, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, the wounded masculine, the wounded feminine. And also, I think like so much, you know, in prior episodes, I talked about like the patriarchy and misogyny and everything. And, you know, and I think underneath both sides, you know, in both men and women, you know, we've also acknowledged like there is a lot of narcissism, a hell of a lot of narcissism in this, like in just humans as a species. Absolutely. It's fucking weird.
I didn't even know what narcissism really was until this year.
And sociopaths and psychopaths, like
Yeah.
of all species, our brains are by far the most dysfunctional. Like there is something really, really off with a lot of too many people's brains. But like, you know, I want to have a bigger conversation now about like moving forward, because I think if people can, this is one of my theories, that if men and women can really come to terms, and it is complicated. Being a woman is complicated. I think being a man right now is complicated even. I think being a man was easier in the past, but like now I think
it was easier.
It was, and I think now it's getting complicated, and I think, you know, it's one thing for you in your 50s, but like I worry about someone who's not 56, but someone who's 26, who is now actually like...
In this world right now, they got no shot.
Okay, wait, but like, let's...
I'm just saying there's so much...
I don't want to believe that.
There's just so much going on. There's so much going on. The information highway is so expanded right now that I think that, you know, as a man, there's just so much pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so easy now for people to just give up on people.
Yeah.
You know, I find that women now, nobody's working at anything anymore. Just like, I'm moving on to the next one. On to the next, like the songs, on to the next one. You know what I mean? And, you know, who could do the most for me right now? There's no love. There's no love.
No,
like,
it's become very transactional.
I feel like, it's so transactional. And it's sad because, you know, if you have this spirit of romance, you know, it's gone. Like, you know, it's like, you know, give me some money and I'll make you happy. You know what I mean? And it's like, there's no fun in that. It's actually
like the absence of
love.
There's
no chase. There's no like I said, there's no romance. There's no like meeting somebody at the bar and at the restaurant. It's just like go online.
But even deeper than that.
Swipe left.
And this will certainly, we're going to pick up our next conversation on this topic in particular. But I think like the absence of love creates so much loneliness that people do not want to admit and aren't even cognizant of. I don't even think they have the self-awareness to realize how lonely they really are.
A lot of people don't.
And that like stuff or being busy or being out or, you know, just dating a ton, basically like just staying on this hamster wheel to distract themselves and keep themselves busy. You know, the absence of love leads to loneliness. And I think that is part of like the agony in humanity right now is just how lonely and disconnected people are.
I think the people that don't appreciate the good people that come into their lives.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people need discernment for that. People
you get sent very few blessings in your life.
That's right. And
there are very few
I know
people.
that for a fact.
Yeah, me too.
You know, you only get a few chances at this, man.
And I think I have been that for some people who have fumbled big time, epically.
I've been fumbled.
Yep.
You know, and you know, when you find people that are generous, that have a good heart, that care about how you're doing, if you're okay, you know, that love you with every bit of them, and you just
flaws and all
kick them to the curb, like you know, like you're getting this every day. No, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
No, not at all.
This doesn't happen every day.
And you need
you're lucky
someone
if it happens once.
You need someone who's able to see you and your monsters.
Absolutely,
and who's
accept it.
Accept it. And very, very, very few people will ever do that. But I think, you know, a lot of people are, you know, easily distracted by shiny objects. And that is essentially what we have made each other. But on that note, we are going to come back in the new year. And we are definitely going to pick up on relationships specifically, because I think you have a world of knowledge to teach.
Thank you.
Men and women coming up. And I know they have, you know, the deck stacked against them right now. But like, I'm rooting for the good guys.
Me too.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for doing this. And thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And leave your comments and questions in down below. And I guess stay tuned for part 2. All right. Thank you very much, Joe. This was a pleasure. Such an honor.